Hello, and welcome to the Simply Business Interview Podcast, a podcast created by business owners for business owners. I am your host, John Jennings. And I believe that most business owners are working way too hard for much too little. And one of our issues is that we overcomplexify things. I believe the answers are almost always within us or within our reach. I like to say that I'm a simple man with simple ideas. So welcome to Simply Business. All right, today we are joined by David Galownia, who is the CEO of Slingshot. They're an IT firm based here in Louisville, Kentucky, and looking forward to hearing more of his story. David, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about what you do there at Slingshot.
Sure. Hey, everybody. I'm David, and I'm the CEO of Slingshot as well as the owner. And Slingshot is a tech services firm. We started all the way back in 2005, just celebrated 20 years in business. And we help either entrepreneurs, small businesses, and mid-sized businesses that have a tech product idea that they want to build. They come to us a lot of times with just an idea, and we'll design it, build it, launch it, and then of course support it. And then we also help larger companies with staffing, finding really high quality talent for initiatives that they want to undertake.
Yeah, cool. And congrats on 20 years. That's awesome. That's way beyond average. So, and
Yeah, thank you.
you must have been like in middle school when you started. It is you look like this has been a big part of your career. So tell us a little bit about why you started Slingshot, why and what was the impetus behind that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think for me in my youth, I always wanted to start a business. It was just something I was very passionate about. I had a lot of jobs growing up, starting from when I was 10, I had a paper out, and I was just always prideful of what I did. And I knew I wanted to make sure I could create a foundation to always act that way. And I was very independent as well. So starting a business was natural. Um, I Slingshot was something that I kind of happened into. I actually wasn't involved with tech a whole lot in my youth. I was into racing cars. I was trying to make a career out of that.
Hmm.
And one day I wanted to have a website for my sponsors and found somebody to do it in exchange for a sticker on the car. And I didn't really like how they had done it and decided to do it myself. And I really learned and really started loving messing with websites and technology overall. So um, at some point, I went back to school, graduated from U of L, University of Louisville here in Kentucky, and then immediately started. And it's what Slingshot is and has evolved quite a bit from those early days. When you're starting out, especially when you're young, you've got a lot to learn. And so we did that the hard way, learned the hard way, and eventually started figuring things out. And we grew, and here we are 20 years later.
Yeah, that's cool. I was just talking to another business owner earlier that just talked about how many failures they had in the first few years, how many mistakes they had to kind of go through and work through and pivot and reinvent themselves over and over. And that's such a common story. What were some of the early challenges that came kind of unexpected to you as the founder?
Well, I mean, for me, we're a services company, so services company, product company. In my later career, I've got some product companies that I've started, and uh, a lot of different lessons you can learn. But I think, early on as a service firm, we were actually trying to build products, and we were uh, of the mindset, let's build something that's a good idea, let's put it out there and see how it does. And of course, I think the reality of business is that, um, it's not the field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. And I think this is a lesson for people in tech that more have to learn, and the amount of effort. Building something is the easy part, really. Developing the market for it, to me, is the more harder thing to do. And I think when you're early on in a business, there's a fine line of I need to pivot and I need to go further, because sometimes what happens is if you start going a little bit towards something and you're not succeeding and you're not getting sales. And it could just mean you need to make some small adjustments, or it could mean that you don't have enough data. And I've seen this in our product companies with working with some entrepreneurs where, they're not, if you don't get that product in front of enough people, then you can't really say I need a pivot. And there's a mental aspect of, well, I got this product out there, I built it and I tried a little bit and it's not working. So let me go on to something else. And oftentimes that's not the time to do it. You've got to make sure, whether it's a product, a service, a new offering, um, you've got to make sure when you try something, you really try it and you gather enough data where you can truly say, okay, this isn't working, and I need to change something. And it doesn't
Mhm.
always have to be an entirely new business model. Sometimes it's just the customers you're targeting. That's a perfectly
Mhm.
legit pivot. I'm going to go after a different customer segment. I'm going to change my offering. I'm going to change my messaging, how I'm presenting it, what
Mhm.
I'm focusing on. Maybe the product is close and it's missing one key aspect that you didn't think of
Right.
um, initially. So you have to be really disciplined. At the other end of the spectrum is, you have an idea, you have a new offering, and you become emotionally invested in it. And this is the other thing I think you see is that um, you know, you get this idea, you get this amazing idea in the shower, wherever you are, and then you start thinking about it, and you start coming up with all these other ideas on top of it, and imagine these scenarios, and you never really talk to customers or get it out there enough to see if
Yeah.
it's valid, and you keep building on yourself this idea, and it becomes infallible. Um, and so mentally, as an entrepreneur and as a business person, you have to divest yourself from the ideas, and you can't be focused on this idea is going to succeed. You got to be focused on this business is going to succeed, which
Yeah.
is completely different. And so when you're focused on the business succeeding, you can take that idea, evaluate it objectively, and kill it if it needs to die or change it. So
Yeah.
it's very, that's why I think for me, really truly establishing your offering, if your services or if you're a product, what's the right product and what is the right audience, that is the most difficult aspect,
Yeah.
I think, of starting a business and moving it from just a business with a product to a business with a successful product.
Yeah. Gosh, that it's actually great because I've seen so many times where people say, I've got this great idea and we're going to launch this thing and it's going to be, best thing since sliced bread. And then, lo and behold, the market just isn't interested in it, and
Mhm.
chances are if the market was interested in it, someone would have already tried it unless you just got something extremely um, unique and brilliant. But I and timing is everything too. I know years ago I developed a product in the healthcare market, a telemedicine product. We took it to market in 2014, and we struggled. We did okay with it, but we struggled and struggled. And then COVID came along, and everybody wanted telemedicine. And we're like, wow, just off by
Mhm.
half a decade. Uh, we were a little too early because people weren't that interested at that time. But boy, they were when lockdowns happened. So yeah, good learnings there. So you kind of talked about how you had to pivot and things. What was the uh, biggest surprise to you as a business owner? And we could go back to early days, or maybe it's even been more recent. What's just been one of those unexpected aspects of being a business owner that you uh, did not see coming?
I think, there's a lot there. When you launch a business, it's going to be hard, but I don't think you really know it. People tell you that, but you're in such a state of euphoria, emotionally, 'cause you're like, man, I got this idea. I'm gonna start a business. It's gonna be awesome. And mentally, you have to be very, very tough because there's gonna be a lot of pain, and it's gonna take a lot longer on most businesses. I mean, both when you hear about overnight success or big successes, it's usually like years later, and
Right.
that you don't see those years, those first few years. And I think the expectation that, this is going to be, we're going to build it, we're going to start, signing customers, blah, blah, blah. It's always way harder. There's so many obstacles, and it requires a lot of patience. So you have to go through the grind. You can't avoid it. And that grind, I would say, um, that's more difficult and longer than I think what a lot of people are prepared for. And if you don't go in mentally preparing yourself for that, that can be your downfall. And so I think just maybe, as a surprise was, wow, this is just going to take longer. It's not enough to just have a good product and a good service. It still is not enough, because you got to have a customer that wants to take a chance on you because you're
Right.
early. The timing has to be right, to your point. And you have to find that exact person, which requires knocking on a lot of doors. And it's just that momentum that you get as a business that takes years. And so just that patience and that ability and toughness to grind, those are the things that I think can
Yeah.
catch people off guard. And again, even if you think it's going to be hard, you don't
It's going
know
to
it
be hard.
until you're in it. It's going to be
Yeah.
harder. Yeah.
Yeah. I launched my business 7 years ago, and um, I sought counsel from a number of people I respected. And I remember about 2 or 3 years ago, I was having lunch with one of those guys. He goes, John, I remember, meeting with you at Heine Brothers. You were pitching this idea and you wanted to get my feedback. And he goes, um, if you could go back today, John, and meet with the two of us, what would you say? And I started to go, man, it's harder than you ever imagined. There's going to be this pandemic that's going to hit you here in about 18 months. All these things are going to happen. And I thought, no, I wouldn't want to know all those things because I probably wouldn't have done, you know. And now, because now I'm living my dream. But that first couple of years, it was more like a little bit more of a nightmare than a dream. It was tough.
Mhm.
And it takes intestinal fortitude. I probably talked to at least once a week. I talk to somebody who's thinking about going into business for themselves, and that's one of the main things I tell them. It's you got to be ready for the grind. You got to have enough cash in the bank to not be too stressed about it, and you
Mhm.
got to be prepared to grind it out for 18 months, 2 years. Because it's going to take that for people to believe. You don't even believe you're going to be around the first year. You know?
Yeah. Well, they don't, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
I remember like 2 years in meeting some people who had met me in my first year, and they went, "Oh, you're still doing this." I'm like, "Did you think it was just a hobby?"
well, that's right. That's the fight for legitimacy that almost all startups are going to go through. It's like when you're early on. I mean, they're not just looking at your product and saying, "Well, this is untested. I don't want to be the first." You
Yeah.
have to find the early adopters, but they're also looking at your business and saying, well, this business just started. I don't know if I want to, invest in a product or service where this business might not be here in 9 months. And
Yeah.
so it's those two things combined. They can crush you unless um, you embrace that grind and realize, okay, I need to find these early adopters. I need to maybe play this a little bit differently, and I'm going to have to work through. I'm going to have enough cash, enough patience. I have to have my life set up. I'm going to have to manage my expectations. You can get through those for sure, but just you got to, like I said, it's a balance too of staying tough, staying with what you're doing, and then knowing when to change things. Very,
Yeah.
very difficult.
Yeah. Well, tell us. I mean, obviously, 20 years you've had success. So, what's one of those proud moments you've had where you faced a challenge and you overcame it? Can you have a victory story to share?
Well, sure. Early on, when we switched to consulting full time, which we were messing with products in those early years, we started to grow pretty decently, pretty quickly, year over year. And about 7 years into that consulting period, we were up to 18 people. We were probably a $2 million company. Um, and the market had changed, and we had remained stagnant. And what
Mm.
happened was we lost a big client and we lost another one. And we probably lost about 60% of our revenue in 6 months, seemingly out of nowhere. It really wasn't out of nowhere, but at the time, and I had two salespeople, one after the other, one day after the next. They came to my office and said, I don't want to work here anymore. They left, and I had a business partner who came into my office a day after that and said, I want out of this. And so it was just me. And at that point, I had to evaluate, do I want to continue? Do I want to jump ship? Do I want to try to sell what's left here? Um, and for me, I kept coming back to the fact that, look, I'm in the field of technology. This is where I want to be. I've got a talented group of people, and myself, I'm smart. I can figure this out. So um, at that point, I bought out my business partner. I had to lay off more staff. I had to get the business back to a cash flow neutral position because I had lost a lot of money. I'd held on to people too long. All my savings was gone, and I wasn't making any money. So had to sort of reevaluate, and that's when I really started diving into the business. I had people telling me, well, your salespeople should have been fired. They're not doing the job, and I started looking at it and saying, well, no, the real reason here is the market change, and we didn't change with it. We were stagnant. We didn't act. We didn't adapt. And so started to change, changed our offering. We were doing just development, started doing design, strategy, cloud work, mobile app, all kinds of stuff. We became more of an end-to-end provider instead of just software developers, programmers for hire, and changed our marketing, our name, our office, everything, our structure. Spent a lot more time on marketing versus sales. Um, and we started to grow. We started to turn around. I'm happy to say now, not only do I own 100% of the business, but we are 10 times larger than we were back then. So we turned that whole thing around, but that was a real gut check moment.
Yeah.
And the biggest takeaway from that was, as a founder, I got comfortable with where I was going. Maybe there was too much going well, and you know, you've got to. I always say the riskiest thing you can do is do nothing. Um,
Mhm.
you've got to do something. You've got to be hyper aware of what's going on around you. Um, you really got to be in it. And so for me, that was my wake up call. And like I said, today we're an Inc. 5000 company. We're growing year after year, and much bigger than we ever would have been had we not gone through that.
Yeah. Yeah. You just mentioned that the Inc. 5000. I was going to ask you a little about that. What did that feel like as the founder I mean, 20 years in, and this is just last year, right? You made the Inc. 5000. For those that don't know what it is, tell what that measure is, and how did what kind of validation
Yeah,
did that give you?
I mean, it was awesome. A really proud moment. It's, the Inc. 5000 is basically represents the 5,000 fastest growing companies in the US. And so for us, it was a big achievement. I think it validated what we were doing and the kind of direction we were taking. I mean, and just the team that we have and just the diversity. We're so much more of a diverse company, both in the people we have, the breadth of skills, and what we're doing, how we're helping people. And so incredibly proud of that.
Yeah, very cool. So you also mentioned how AI is impacting everything, and I'm an AI geek myself, and when I whenever I have a client who tells me they're not using AI, first I tell them they're wrong. They're using AI. They just don't realize it. But then, I'll work with them on how to intentionally use it to better their business. How are you using AI, and how's it impacting your particular field?
Yeah, so it's everything that's going on right now. It's hugely important because for us, we're building solutions for people, tech products, tech ideas, and now most of the tech ideas that come through the door have a component of AI. So we're getting to use those AI tools and building features into products that are utilizing AI. But beyond that, for us, we use AI in every area of our business. So our marketing team uses it. We use it for brainstorming. We use it for topic generation, blog generation. We use it on our sales. We use it in our project management for recording meetings, for helping us generate requirements, and of course our developers and our QA testers. And
Mhm.
um, I think for us as a tech company, the hardest thing for us is our developers themselves and our QA personnel. They have to change how they're doing things. And that's very hard when you've been doing things a certain way. Now, developers by nature like to tinker. Um,
Mhm.
so it works pretty well, but you also got to empower them. And
And I
sometimes
hate
we're
that. I,
it,
it,
they they're skeptical initially, right? Because
yeah.
they look at it, but they're also honest, because AI is changing so quickly. I mean, you almost have to reevaluate it every 6 months.
Oh, yeah.
Because what's true a year ago may be completely different now, and so you got to evaluate it. You got to learn to use it. Um, I think the best analogy is to say it's like having an assistant. It's a very inexpensive assistant.
Mhm.
And if everybody in the world had an assistant, we'd all be more productive, right? Some of us actually have assistants, but those of us who don't, or a junior employee working with you,
Yeah.
and sometimes even more than that, I would say, depending on what you're doing. But you've got to, I think, as business, look where you can leverage it because somebody else will, and it could
Mhm.
be something that you don't want to be blindsided by it either. If you're not using it to help drive efficiencies with your business, a competitor probably is, and so um, I think any organization, the best thing you can do is just you can start to use some of the tools that are out there, start incorporating it, start using ChatGPT, you just start
Yeah.
exploring it. It's a tool, and any tool takes time to learn how to use it properly. So,
Yeah.
but I think but I also would say it's going to be a bigger impact a few years from now. Right now, it's a smaller one. It's still impactful, but that's going to
Mhm.
keep growing very, very fast.
Yeah. So how do you stay current with technology? I came out of the IT field myself. I was always, but it's just seems like everything's going at such a rapid pace. How are you staying current?
Well, I mean, it's tough, right? I think you got to be dialed into all the different publications. You got to read. You've got to talk to people. You from just being in a tech organization every day. We use Slack to communicate, and there's always
Yeah.
somebody throwing something out there like, "Hey, have you seen this? Have you heard this?" So I think you just got to be plugged in as much as you can. There's events going on. You'll see a lot of AI events, which I think are good to go to, especially if you're um, not sure where to start. Find an AI event where you can go and learn a little bit, or get the tool, just start
Yeah.
playing with it. But yeah, just staying plugged in, and that's if you're not plugged in, if you're plugged out, then that's where your business is at risk.
Yeah. So what are you most excited about going forward after 20 years?
Well, I think at this stage in Slingshot's business, we're looking at some bigger moves. I won't say what they are yet, but we're at
Come
a
on, can we
stage.
break some big
Yeah.
news here?
Well, I don't have it to share yet, but
Yeah.
we're looking at some bigger things, and that's always the challenge for me. What helps keep me motivated, I've got to have some kind of bigger thing going on,
Yeah.
and you got to keep challenging yourself as well. So. Um, I think the next chapter is how can we get bigger and how can we take that next step because um, especially we don't have funding, we're a services business. Every time you want to make a big leap, it's typically you need a lot of investment. You got to take risks, you got to change
Right.
once again how you're doing things.
Yep.
And that's a big deal. So but you got to get excited about it too, right? That's the only way to push through it. And, as a company, you can get stuck at a certain level because it may require a bigger move to get to the next level.
Yeah.
And it never ends. There's always some risk or big move you
Yeah.
have to make.
The stakes keep getting higher, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Absolutely. So, David, I always like to ask kind of wrap up questions, just kind of what advice would you give to that, 20 something out there that's maybe sitting in where you were 20 years ago, is thinking about doing something like this? What advice would you give them?
Well, I think starting business is not for everyone, but I think when you're young, the emphasis is really on learning as much as you can. There's a lot of successful entrepreneurs that will go into an industry when they're young, learn a lot about it, find issues in that industry, and then start a successful business years later.
Yeah.
Tons of examples of that, and I would say that's the highest success rate is actually those older people who know something about an industry. But as a younger individual, you do have advantages. And for me, I started young, and I didn't have a mortgage, I didn't have a family, I didn't have a spouse. You have all this. I was living in a dirt cheap apartment. I didn't really need money. Um, so I could afford to make almost nothing and get by, and that's a real advantage. I had a lot of time on my hands, and so you can use that. But when you're young, I would say the focus has got to be on learning. You got to realize where you are and that you need to learn a lot. And in starting a business, you can learn a lot. And so sometimes the best thing you can do is just to go forward. A lot of people get stuck or paralyzed with fear, or they find problems that maybe aren't that big of a deal. So uh, find something that there's a genuine problem. If you're going to start a business, whether it services, retail, tech product, talk to your customers is the number one thing you can do. And I can't say that enough because I've seen people, come up with ideas and it's in their head. Like they think they know something and they do know something, but there's so much more levels and nuances that you've got to get beyond yourself.
Yeah.
If you can't talk to customers, it's just not going to work. That should be something from day one before you build anything, before you launch anything. You should be talking to customers constantly, getting honest feedback, because it's going to help you succeed tremendously. It's going to help save you lots of money and time, which when you're starting out and you're young, you have time, but you don't
Yeah.
have money. I'll tell you that.
Right.
Very hard to get money for just an idea. In fact, it's very rare, especially when you're young and haven't accomplished anything yet. So you need to have something. You need to be able to lean on something. And for me, that's talking to a customer, getting real data, and learning the market as well. What are the competitors out there? What am I up against?
Yeah. That's some great advice because like you, I've seen people blow through their savings, blow through their retirement, blow through a lot of investment because they had a great idea, but they didn't really have a market. And
Hmm.
that's just some fantastic advice. So thank you for your time. If people want to find out more, connect with you, or find out more about Slingshot, how they best do that?
Yeah, you can definitely find me on LinkedIn, David Galownia. Just search for me out there. Mention the show. I'll connect with you. Happy to do so. For a younger entrepreneur, always happy to meet and help people where I can. And also whyslingshot.com. You can find us there and where to follow us. It's been a
That's
pleasure
that's
being on.
why that's why Slingshot. So it's the shape of a slingshot, right?
Yeah, the
That's
letter Y,
creativity. Yeah.
slingshot.com.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Well, very cool. Well, David, thanks again for your time and appreciate all the value you've added for folks.
All right. Appreciate being here. And thank you, John.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you liked it, please share or like it on whatever platform you use. You can find me on social media. On most platforms, I'm John K. Jennings. My first book is also available. Your Baby is Ugly tells you about 10 truths that business owners need to hear, but often won't, and how to overcome them. You can find it on Amazon. Just search for Your Baby is Ugly. And be watching for our next episode where I'll interview another business owner who will share their stories and insights into what it's like to create a great business.